Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Fire Chief finalist. I have with myself Miss Gail, and she is from the community, and we have Richard and myself. I'm also from the community. So, yes, I'm a community leader here in Aurora. And tell us a little bit about yourself, Miss Gail.
Yes, and hi everybody. My name is Gail Pugh. I lived in the Aurora community for 22 years, so it's a pleasure to be here with you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you also, community, for tuning in. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Mr. Davis, where you're from.
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to say good afternoon to the citizens of Aurora. My name is Richard L. Davis Jr. I am from Austin, Texas. I've been an assistant chief for over about 25 years now. I'm also a member of the military. I was active duty military for 8 years in the Air Force, and I'm currently with the reserves now as we speak.
Okay, thank you for your service.
Thank you. And I've also been with the military for roughly about 25 years.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So I'm doing double duty to protect our country.
We appreciate you.
Yes.
Okay, well, so we can just dive right in. So, to kind of lead this, we really want to know, what is your plan to promote and progress Aurora Fire in an area of diversity and equity and inclusion, and what would be your best practices?
Well, some of the areas I would try to diversify the fire department is, first and foremost, is look to see where we've been first. The numbers basically tell you what directions you need to go. And I know that, for instance, in Austin, we track just about everything we do when it comes to recruitment, hiring, and everything. And so even after we say we go to an event that garners a diverse group of individuals, we track how many of those individuals that actually get into the fire department. And if that pool is productive, we make sure we outline that in our plan for the next recruiting cycle. If that location or that program or that job fair is not conducive of what we need as far as applicants, and we cross it off a list and try to look elsewhere. Because one of the things that when it comes to diversity, you have opportunities and you have obstacles. You look for opportunities where you can be fruitful for the fire department as opposed to as far as achieving diversity. Obstacles you have to look at in your hiring process to see what needs to be removed. For instance, there's a lot of sometimes subtleties that accompany certain things that are associated with the fire service. For instance, I remember way back when I came across some hiring material which talked about having a certain height requirement in order to be a firefighter. Hence the subtleties that is an obstacle that keeps certain people out. So those are the things I would track and look at to ensure that we are running a proper process.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you
You're welcome.
for that question. And we really had a great response from the community. So I've got another question from our community members. Aurora Fire Rescue currently remains in care and rides in to the hospital on all ALS calls, while Falk, the ambulance provider, has paramedics on board their ambulances. Will you change this policy in order to keep our city's apparatus and crews in district ready to respond to other fire/EMS calls?
So I guess this question is referring to transport, as I gather, and that transport is taken away from keeping members available to respond to emergencies. Yes. And so I think that's a question that, because we had talked about this from my recent visit to one of the fire stations. And I would advocate of the fire service taking over the transport. And here's why. I look at things at a 2, 3, 4-pronged process, because having that additional personnel to do transport allows the fire service to gather and gain more positions to increase diversity. And I think that having us continue to do transport, and I remember when I say continue to do transport, I mean not as a third party, but I mean as the fire department absorbing it. Because if the fire department absorbs the transport mission, we maintain the standards, we create the standards, we create a higher level of service to the community members. And it also allows for more positions to be filled with diverse members of the community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What was your biggest accomplishment in your past department?
So my biggest accomplishment that I think that's happened to me as far as being a fire service professional is something that is not written down on paper. It's something that's not on any of my resumes or anything like that. So I restored, per this lady's conversation with myself, her faith in God. I put this program together in Austin called the Red Angels. And so this individual missed the cutoff to get services and whatnot for herself and her child during Christmas. She didn't have a means to pay for anything. She didn't have a means to give her child a great Christmas. The Red Angels program, which we instituted, was a wellness type program that visited certain homes, and we provided wellness checks and safety checks for each of the residences, and we worked with social programs that were in the city. And as we were there, giving her the gifts, because we went all out. We bought her beds, we bought her toys, we brought in, and we had even businesses help donate and help us along. So it was a win-win situation for everybody that collectively came together to make this happen. And so as we're smiling, and also to add to that, we created these bulbs that said Red Angels and had a picture of a fire helmet with the wings coming off. And we put it on her Christmas tree. And she was so proud of that. And as I'm standing there and we're all smiling, she turns to me and she had this altar with the Virgin Mary and stuff like that. And we're looking at that. And she turns to me and she says, "Chief, before this day, I had lost all faith in God." She goes, "You restored my faith in God." And so I was, a lot of times, when I try to put programs together, I have this system in my head that says initiative, movement, and impact. And so we impacted this lady's life, but it deflected from her also to me, because that was an impactful statement that she said to me, and no one has ever said that to me. And then the two gentlemen that was with me, because they were from the news stations, we all walked outside because, guys try to hold the tears back and try to be stoic, which we all did, because it was tough, let me tell you. And I asked the two guys with me, I said, "Well, what did you guys think about that?" And one of the guys told me, he said, "Man, I almost started crying like a little girl, because it was a moment." Yes. And so that in itself is one of my most successful, that I would say is one of my most successful things that I did in the fire service, is impact her life. And I'll never forget it.
Yes, that's beautiful, and a beautiful story. So thank you for sharing that with us and the audience here. Now, what was one of your biggest failures in your past department?
So I think that one of my biggest failure was more of a failure, but more of an adjustment, I should say.
Okay.
I've always been the type of person to kind of look outside the box, when it comes to certain things. Sometimes my mind thinks quick. I look at things and say, we need to, at least see if we can try to change it. And it's not about I or me. It should be about we. We, the organization, we, the team, we, the group, we, the community, to try to make things happen. One of the things that I came across was I was over the payroll division in the fire department. And a lot of times I have a habit of going to seeing, what people on the front line are doing, just to kind of get some perspective. And I'm sitting with one of our payroll folks, and I'm sitting there watching them do their job, and I'm asking questions. Well, why are you doing this way? Why are you doing that? And unbeknownst to me, they literally print out stacks of paper, because you would think that in Austin, our systems would talk to each other, but they don't. And this was way back when. And so I asked myself, why are you printing out all these papers? Because one system, everything's entered and keyed in, and so they have to download all this paperwork. And then they have to go through this paperwork and rekey it into another system. And so again, the systems didn't talk to each other. But so what we wound up doing was creating another system to correct that. Well, we tested that system and we went live the first time. And so in the fire department, there are 3 shifts, A, B, and C shift. Well, there was a failure.
Okay.
2 shifts got paid correctly, A, B, got paid correctly, but C shift did not get paid correctly. And that was a failure on our part and on the system itself. So what did I do? I believe in transparency. So I communicated, we communicated to the C shift folks to let them know, this is what happened, this was a failure, we are going to fix it, we're going to correct it. If you need additional assistance, please let us know, but we're going to work on it day and night to make sure that you guys get paid correctly. And because of our transparency and because of our heads up to take care of it and not hide from it, everything went well and the fire department appreciated it.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. Well, it sounds like you're very strategic with how you go about things.
Yes, just from the military.
Look, I see that. I get that now. So that kind of ties into our next question. Staffing issues appear to be an issue across the country. What are your plans to fix issues in the department? And did you implement this plan, potentially in your last department?
Well, there are staffing issues across the board in general with all jobs. I mean, you can go to a store or any place and all of a sudden you have these long lines, because it almost seems like everybody wants that type of job that you work at home. Yes, everybody wants a job work at home and not have to drive, which is nice. So my hope is that when it comes to staffing issues, we are able to hire more. Because again, it's a 4-pronged process is that in order to get diversity, you need positions to make things happen. You need positions to fill those holes, to increase those staffing issues. I'm a fan of 4-person staffing. 4-person staffing is safe and effective for the general public and for the firefighters themselves. Because, firefighting is hard work. There's a lot of things that the men and women of the Aurora Fire Department and fire departments across the country do. And you need that backing to be safe. You need that backing to pull Mrs. and Mrs. Jones out of that fire. You need that backing to allow us to be safe on those highways when people are buzzing by and not paying attention and they're on their cell phones. You need that other firefighter to tell you, hey, watch your back, there's these cars that are coming. Mm-hmm. And it's supposed to work in where we all under one umbrella of called public safety, working together, PD and fire, to ensure that Aurora is safe, safe in everything that we do as a community. But that's my sense of hope that I'm able to increase staffing by allowing us to do more things with the fire department. One of my biggest things that I've noticed and I've gotten feedback on was the recruiting section. It's kind of an oxymoron type of effect where you say you want to increase diversity, but you have maybe 1 or 2 people in the recruiting division. I know that in my past department, the Austin Fire Department, we have like 4 or 5 people in our recruiting division. We have a budget of about $500,000 to make things happen. Now, when people talk about recruitment and consent decrees and things of that nature, I think that sometimes we have this mindset to run to the finish line. That's the wrong mindset to have. You have to have the mindset to run through the finish line, because recruiting is not just one day or one season. Recruiting is 24/7. It doesn't stop, because otherwise, if you do stop it, you find yourself in a position with a consent decree. And so you actually wind up spending more money in the long run by not taking care of it on the front end. And you have to spend more money on the back end because you didn't do your homework on the front end.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Visibility and accessibility are important in being a leader. Do you feel like you were visible and accessible to your firefighters and community in your previous department?
I would say yes, yes, and yes. Because one of the things that we did, we created a Red Angel program to be visible and to be in the community. I'm also part of the African American Firefighters Association. I'm also part of the Hispanics LULAC Association. I'm also part of the Urban League. I participate in a lot of things community-centric. We got the MLK program. We do Pass the Torch. programs. We do the Juneteenth marches and things of that nature. So yes, you know, the community is why we're here. The community is what we're here to serve. The community is actually, you know, in a sense, running the fire department. Decision-making priorities are based on our decision-making priorities should be based on the community, with the leadership, if I am chosen, me being last on that list. And that's kind of how I see things that should be run, because, you know, if it's not for the community, then why should the fire department exist? Period.
And just to piggyback on that question, if you are hired, how will you go about connecting with our Aurora community?
So if I'm hired, I've created a preliminary 100-day plan. I have it over there in my briefcase, but I have some things in there, 8 goals that I would like to accomplish within the first 100 days. A lot of that has to do with meeting with community members, meeting with business leaders, trying to get perspective as far as how they see the fire department and how they think the fire department should be run, connecting, communicating, coordinating with these individuals out there to get a better understanding. Because at the same time, I think there is lack of understanding externally as far as how the fire department is supposed to work. So it's up to us to bridge those gaps so we can all be on the same page and get that collective perspective to make things better.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. So, really, the emergency management field is evolving rapidly, as you can see. And with the increase in both natural and human caused threats throughout the United States and around the world, there is a greater need for emergency managers to come together to solve complex problems, kind of like you were speaking on PD and fire department working together earlier. So how would you define emergency management, and how can it be a successful program in the city of Aurora?
Well, I define it as a unified front in offsetting whatever emergency comes our way, understanding each other's policies and procedures, and being able to cross lines when it comes to public safety. It's not just always a PD situation. It's not always just a fire situation. It's not always just an EMS situation. I'm used to working with departments that, you know, it's not mine, but it's ours. And that's how it should be. You know, we should have PD's back should have our back, the community should have our back, vice versa. And I know that sometimes things or issues that come up that puts a bad light on certain situations, but at the same time, the public has to understand that it's not the organization, it's the individual that made the mistake. You know, and in some cases, the organization is liable depending on the policies that they have in place. And so I'm not going to, you know, let us off light for that. But, you know, like I said, it goes through process improvements and looking at things and how you operate. It's a constant evaluation of who the department is, how the department is supposed to operate, and how you want the department to be perceived by the public. And also having that open lines of communication with public members, public leaders, whatnot, to get them to understand, and also to let them offer suggestions, because there are some things that we may not see from a department standpoint that maybe Joe Public sees, you know, and that's what it is about open lines of communication. Because if collectively the public's giving feedback and the department's trying to operate as efficient and effectively as we want to be, and with the community's help, it just makes things better for all parties involved. And that should be our goal.
Yes. Just a little bit of background information for this question. In the last several years, some of the relationships between police department and the fire department have been strained. And not so much, I don't think, the administration pieces, but out in the field pieces. And so this last community person wanted to know, what would you do to improve those relationships between police officers and firefighters? So
I would think that, and you know, there was a particular event that Elijah McClain, and I'd bring it up, that, you know, probably, I would say that it did strain a lot of relations between PD and fire, and probably a lot of finger pointing, which is unfortunate. And I did read the reports, the independent reports that were done by an outside agencies as far as that particular incident. And I would say that from that report that there were mistakes that were made. Unfortunately, there were mistakes that were made. And I would say that, yes, mistakes were made based on that report. Again, I'm not trying to armchair quarterback, because the other piece is that I wasn't there.
Yes.
And so I want people to understand that, because there are also additional things that are sometimes not written down or not captured when it comes to those situations. Because I have been part of situations myself, working with PD and being out there with fire, where the scene has changed in a New York minute, so to speak. And so we're there for one thing, and all of a sudden we end up doing something else because the dynamics of the scene. So I want to make sure that I preference that I'm not trying to armchair quarterback of kind of what actually happened. But what I would actually do with PD is to build a relationship, train together, see if our policies coincide with what actually happen on a particular scene. And for instance, we have, what I'm used to is that you have an incident command, and in some cases you have a unified command. And a lot of times those situations switch, particularly in unified command, of who's in charge, because you have the unified command, one agency is in charge, the other two agencies are supplemental. And depending what the major reason you're there are for that particular event, say if it's a police burglary or something like that, and we're there, police with fire. Oh no, that's a bad example, because fire would be the main thing. So depending on what the main goal is for us to be there, the agency with the main goal would be at the top of the echelon, with the other two supplementing. And so it could switch. Say that the PD has an individual who they have in custody, that individual, say, has a heart attack. Call EMS, they come out, then it switches. EMS is at the top of the echelon. They take command to try to save that person's life. Because at the end of the day, the incident priorities, the number one priority is life safety. Yeah. And anything that deals with life safety, that is a priority. That agency that's supposed to take care of that particular event, whether it's a shooting, whether it's a heart attack, that agency takes charge of the event, where the two other agencies are supplemental. And then continue to train and practice on that, and writing policies to ensure that we're doing the right thing. That's how we build relationships, where everybody knows the play and there's an understanding before it actually even happens. That's how you're supposed to do it. And also you could do let community members know that, hey, this is how we operate, this is what we're about. Because I think sometimes that we get ourselves in a crossroad when things do happen, because community members don't understand how we're supposed to operate. Our policies and procedures, a lot of times they're hidden. Why not allow our communities to see how we operate and get an understanding, so there'd be less questions? Let everybody know the play, just like you do on a football team. All the linemen, everybody, the quarterback, everybody knows the play in order to go make that touchdown. So I say, let's let everybody know the play, and so let's go make that touchdown as a community.
I really like that analogy.
Yeah.
Great. So.
No problem.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, those are all the questions we have from the community. And thank you so much for taking the time to answer those.
Thank you.
Yeah, you gave some really inspirational responses. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Was there any? We have time for one more question.
If you want to.
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
So I come from a fire inspector background.
Okay.
Did you have a chance to see the City of Aurora's division with the fire inspectors there and life safety at all?
No, I did not. I went out they took me out to the training division.
Okay.
Because currently I am over training, hiring, and recruiting in the Austin Fire Department. Okay. And so one of the things I wanted to see was, let me see what the college cadets train, and things of that nature. So we did go out there. And so, I, because I've been over the training division for a long time, one thing I want to make sure that we get across when it comes to diversity, because I know there's an expectation that we diversify the fire department, but I want to make sure that everybody understands that diversity is going to take time. You got to build these blocks, because there are also standards that have to be abided by. You can't circumvent standards in order to create diversity, because if you do, you create chaos. And that goes against life safety. Life safety for the community members, life safety for the firefighter, and life safety for the individual that shouldn't have been in the place to be a firefighter if he or she was not ready. And so that's why I wanted to go out and see what type of training they had at the training academy, to see some of the things they had in place. And you know, it had some pretty good. I love the training academy. You guys had some pretty good updated equipment. I was impressed.
Yes, it is beautiful.
Yeah.
I can tell you a few facts that, you know, there is a lot of buildings in Aurora, a lot of commercial buildings,
Yeah.
a lot of apartments that get inspected.
Yes.
And so I guess I'm thinking of, you know, do you have any ideas about how you would continue to maybe either improve the fire inspection program, or just your ideas around inspection programs?
Well, so inspection programs themselves are preventative in nature. They, in a sense, you know, stop the fire before it actually happens. You know, by make sure that you know, certain fire preventative devices are in place, everything's working, and et cetera. And I know sometimes people like to cut corners, particularly when they want to get a building built and they want to get signed off on their fire inspection. And then, and from my experience, if it doesn't get done fast enough, they go down to council and try to get things pushed. And so my mindset when it comes to that is we follow policy, we follow the rules. Because there's three things that I will not go against when it comes to how we operate: is anything illegal, immoral, or unethical. And I think we have to run an above-board process, an above-board standard, and maintain that standard as we move forward. Because we, as a fire service, have to ensure that we are representing the community in a positive way. And doing that, that's the way to do it, you know, and maintain it.
Well, thank you so much for just answering that last question.
No problem.
I appreciate you expounding on it.
Yes, yes.
And I'll turn it back over to Aspen, because
I actually got a question for you.
Oh.
So do you guys, one thing I have not seen is, do you guys have an arson dog in place as far as?
You know, I have been gone for a while.
Okay.
3 years to be exact.
Yeah, I was meaning to ask that question.
I'm not sure.
Okay, because here where way I see it is,
Yeah.
I try to utilize things in a multi fashion, because that arson dog itself can also be used for recruiting. That arson dog could also be used for community events and things like that. So you don't look at things in one-dimensional, you look at it in a multi-dimensional fashion in order to get things done.
Yes.
And that's how you're successful. You just don't look at one pot, you look at multiple pots to make things happen. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, community, for these questions. And make sure you tune in to this. Look at the whole video. It was really spicy. Great answers, great questions. And thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yes.
Thank you.